17th of August, 2024 at 12:48 p.m. here in Shelton, Washington, United States of America. Welcome to our Cosmic Journey, the Dev and Design podcast, highlighting the journey that the lowly dev and the lowly designer are taking to making the world's best astrology software, as we would say. I'm designer Jake. He is engineer Trey. Hello, Trey.
Hello, Jake.
Look at that moon behind you. Look at how spacey and
Nope.
cosmic-y, yeah, I'll decide, that you're looking today. We decided to do this episode here at the library because we want to change things up, Why not?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to be trying to keep my tone down a little bit because I'm in the outside part of the library, actually in the teen section, which is a very cool little area here for the kids. But there's nobody here right now, so I'm just here recording the video.
Trey's using his best NPR library voice. It's not usually the library's not great for sound design. We're going to see how that works out for us today. The episode today, as you could tell from the poster image, is called The Need for Speed. Trey's going to do his check-in question. We're going to talk about speed graphs yet again, but I think we ended up in a great place at the end of this, and there's a lesson to be learned from all of that. We're also going to talk about setting boundaries and the need for speed there. And doing a big thank you from that. Everything okay over there? You're looking a little...
Yeah, there's some children just came down in the other section down here, and they looks like they dumped a bunch of toys out. So,
So, all good so far. Mr. Henry,
Okay.
is your check-in question today. Why don't you go ahead and do your check-in question if you were to be so kind?
Yeah. So the tech check-in question for this cycle is, I just picked up my copy of the Steganographia, the new translation by Skinner and Clark, and I noticed in the translation of the original cover of the manuscript that in these classic texts, there's often this just ridiculously long and wild claims made on sort of either the cover or kind of the subtitle of the volume. And so I guess my question for you is, in the biography of Jake Zukowski, what is the book's subtitle?
Mm.
Feel free to go as flowery as possible.
Okay, so it's Jake Zukowski, the floweriest
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. And really long-winded too. It can be a whole paragraph.
Okay. I would say then we would be talking about, I'm just going to spitball here for a little bit. There's something around structure. There's something around being highly, I think the theme of my life right now, and I really have to check my transits for this, is that I'm getting very sensitive about things, but I don't come across as a very sensitive person. And so there's something around the cold starkness of the kind of Saturn and Virgo first house type of external projection of self versus the internal side of me, which is really a deeply turbulent and emotional, Venus is in my fourth. I don't know. We're just gonna put it that way. So there's something around. Never even thought about this. That means that my Saturn squares my Venus, which probably is something,
By
right?
sign. They might be a bunch of degrees off, but by
Oh,
sign.
but we're more traditional astrologers. We do it by sign. So I think what I would go for is Jake Zukowski, disgustingly hard on the outside, a mushy pile of emotion down deep. There it is. I want something that is completely not giving me any credit. I know, I understand that every song that is written about the complexity of the female body or the female mind is always this one. Everyone will say oh, this song, it talks exactly about me. What I think it is very cliche to say, oh, he has a very hard exterior, but he's very emotionally inside. I kind of wish I was the opposite way, that I was externally very emotional and inside I was hard. But you know what? I'm working on that about myself. Maybe that's the subtitle, period. There you go. What about you? What's your subtitle?
Yeah, so I think for me, it has to at least to some extent encompass the fidgetiness of Trey Henry. So it has to be like, something like the great and glorious. So it's Trey Henry colon, the great and glorious software engineer, sorcerer, renowned through the many ages of and partaking in the most valuable and sacred of arts, with an E at the end, um, and known to many as fidgety and difficult, and generally left wisely left to his own devices.
I mean, we're really talking about 18th century literature here, or 17th century. I
Yeah.
didn't realize how old we were talking. I was just reading a book from 1910 that is just as ridiculous as this. In 1910, they didn't use this flowery prose. Little did I know. See, there's me not even answering the question correctly. Good check in,
No,
everybody.
no,
Good check in.
you did great. You did great. The Steganographia is like really, really old. I don't.
Who
I'm
knows?
gonna. Yeah, it's quite old. It's a very old manuscript. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. You have redone some work on the speed graph. You want to talk a little bit about like why you're back to the speed graph? We're going to put you in the solo version, so tell us a little bit about where we were, where we're going, why we went there, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so the thing was, so we showed speed graphs last cycle, I believe, and then one of the things that we noticed is that because we had these rounded, because we were rounding off the ends of the graph, basically, when the when you would get down to either something that was very slow or something that was very fast, the rounding would get messed up, and so you'd get this kind of like squared off line. And when we started really digging into that and how the speed graphs were designed, it actually it sort of became clear that we weren't going to be able to fix this problem easily, even though it sounds like a relatively easy problem to solve. And so we kind of cycled a little bit on maybe changing the design up a little bit for the speed graphs, and we did that. And there's a bunch of benefits to this, and I think it's maybe easier just to show the chart.
Yeah, I
So
think it's a great
yeah,
idea.
yeah. So going over here to the chart. Okay, so we're just looking at a chart for now, and the first thing I'll show is how the moon looks. So we showed this last time, and last time we showed sort of like a graph, sort of coming over here from the left, and a gradient on it. Now you'll see that there's just a dot, and the dot is showing. So the dot still has the gradient color, so it has a color that would be appropriate for that position in the graph, and then it still has the slow win under line here. So if let's move around a little bit here. Also, ignore the arrows in this case, like both arrows. Both of these arrows are showing up right now. That is a bug that's getting fixed very shortly. So if we move up here to where the moon is getting slower, you can see that the dot will sort of moves over to the left, and now you can see that like it's slower than this line. This is great because everybody will naturally intuit, or most people will naturally intuit, that the sort of the center point of this dot is like the exact position, right, or the exact speed on this line graph. And so you can see here that it's like a little bit slower than the sort of like it's slow when under line. This was actually very problematic before with the rounded cap, because with a rounded cap and a progress bar, it's a little bit difficult to know, like, is it when it's in the solid part of that graph, or is it like if it's like overlapping a little bit, does that mean it's still going actually faster than than the line that indicates slow and under? So it was a little bit ambiguous, and now with the dot, I think it's a little bit more, it's a lot more easy to understand. The other cool thing is that so let's go back to now here, because we've got Mercury in retrograde currently. So now you can see that the uh, dot is also indicating that, like, okay, it's red because it's in retrograde. It gets brighter red the more retrograde it goes, just kind of like with the gradient before, but now just being a dot. But now we also have the zero marker. So this would be so the solid line is when the planet is is stationed, basically. And being exactly on that dot would be, or like the center point of the circle exactly on that line would be, it is exactly stationary. And then we have the dashed line indicating the average speed. And so now, like if I look at Mars for now, Mars is actually quite fast right now. It's faster than its average speed.
Wow. In Bound, in
And
Deacon, and
yeah,
even
yeah,
faster. That's a dignified
and
Mars right there.
yeah, and really fucking with Jupiter. So yeah, so
Mars, colon,
this
effing with Jupiter. That's its subtitle in its book.
yeah. We also have Saturn in retrograde. So you can see also that with now the relative zero marker, the zero marker being correctly positioned now instead of being fixed at a 33%, that you can also kind of see that, like, Saturn is generally speaking relatively close to its average speed is relatively close to its zero, to its station. And then, if you look at something like Venus, which we kind of showed before, like Venus's average speed is actually very much on the high end for what would be a station. So that's also
Yeah.
kind of like interesting information to be able to take in. Yeah. So,
Was
and
it at
all of the rest of the
Pluto,
stuff, I
by
think,
the
are
way? Can you look at Pluto? Because Pluto also has a very weird speed graph. Yeah. Can you zoom in on that too,
interesting.
just so we can take a look at
Oh
that?
yeah.
Yes. Also, when you zoom in, you must make the sound. Very good. So, as you can see here, Pluto stations, the difference between Pluto stationing versus Pluto moving at an average speed is very, very close. And then, but there's a
Yeah.
very wide array from how slow Pluto goes to how fast Pluto goes. Pluto, of
Yeah.
course, right now is in retrograde and is kind of dancing around the Capricorn Aquarian line. That's a fun one
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Pluto's orbit is very eccentric. So it has a very just its orbit in general is kind of a weird one. And so from the vantage point of Earth, it is very frequently retrograde. So it's kind of like always fluctuating between retrograde and direct, retrograde and direct. So like Neptune is also relatively close, and Uranus is also relatively close because all of those outer planets basically, relative to the Earth, they are kind of frequently moving retrograde, frequently moving direct, frequently moving retrograde. Whereas the quote unquote inferior planets, or the planets that are closer to the sun than the Earth, like Venus and Mercury, have the widest swings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I love it. That's
Yeah.
great work.
Yeah. 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 I like this. I think we
I think
ended
it
up in a
looks a
really good
lot
place here.
better. It conveys a whole lot more. The other thing that we were doing before, because the speed graph would be so hard to see in certain cases, we were artificially placing the line for what was it? Was it retrogrades? Retrogrades line was always 33% in. So anything that was stationing would always be on the third of that graph. I don't want
Right.
to like I describing UI in words is like one of the least interesting things to do. Anyways, to say now we got rid of that idea of having this line arbitrarily placed. Now we put it in the right place. And so it gives astrologers a much more correct and precise way of looking and feeling speed than we did before. And this goes back to that thing that we talked about many episodes ago around our prototype culture. We have to prototype it, we have to feel it, and once we feel it, we're like, oh, it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And there's only so much time that you can spend kind of fixing the thing that you're doing before you start saying, you know what, I don't think the prototype works, like the thing that we created works anymore. It does feel like we're losing something by throwing something away, but in that kind of doing something, having a journey, and then moving to like something new, you gain a lot of knowledge, you gain a lot of perspective into what works and what doesn't work, and that is invaluable. That can sometimes be lost in a process like this.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And it's in this case there wasn't a ton that needed to be thrown away. And the things that got fixed actually resulted, I think, in a better experience overall. So, yeah, and that sometimes happens. Like until you kind of, throw something at the wall and are like, okay, let's try this out. The nuances of whether or not it's actually going to work well, haven't emerged yet. And then once they do, then you can sort of say like, okay, how can we do a better job here to make this better? So
Yeah,
yeah, I agree.
love it. The other part of Need for Speed, other than a speed graph, is Trey and me speeding up. So I'll go to me for a second. Um, we actually, I think this would be best seen through me sharing my work from last cycle, which should have been done the cycle before, but I couldn't get it done in time, and therefore I'm a week behind. These are task flows. We've shown task flows before. That's not the really interesting thing in all of this. What is, but the nice thing about this is that all of these task flows are now done. They give a lot of detail into how things are supposed to work, how things are not working. These, by the way, are speed graphs. These are not phalluses. Don't
Anything
even
else?
just get that out of your mind right now. There is no phallus on this screen at all. So 5.6% of phallus is that. Yeah, okay, got it. And then we have stuff here. And now I'm getting to the point where I'm referencing old documentation. So for doc 70, refer to doc 65, it's getting super complicated. And that's not the interesting part about this. The interesting part is that in doing all of this, we got to a part of the process that I could see things that I hadn't seen before. How do I put this? It was apparent to me that we had way more work than we expected. And I don't think that this was a huge shock, but I guess I was shocked about exactly how much work we're talking about here. So I did one of my task flows, and from that task flow became 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 new things that I needed to do. What Mr. Henry and I have been doing is now trying to set boundaries with friends, with family, with each other to say, look, we've got a closed beta that's coming out in Q4. We have to get it done. And we're seeing the writing on the wall. We're not going to announce it right now, but there's a very exciting thing that we will probably be taking a part of that will be coming out in November that is also incredibly important for us to have some good presentation there. So one way that we are trying to find our need for speed is creating these boundaries around our life and our energy so that we can get these things done. There's not much else to say about that other than it kind of sucks having boundary conversations, but it's very important. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's crunch time.
It's
That's
crunch
what
time.
it is.
It is
Uh,
crunchy out there.
yeah, I was just thinking of this in relation to the Jupiter Saturn and Gemini conjunction, and then Mars squaring. Um, or sorry, I think I said that wrong. Mars and Jupiter in Gemini
That's
conjunct
correct.
and squaring Saturn. Um, and that just dynamic of the sort of pressurized, the pressurized, um, spreading out or bordering on chaos of sort of Jupiter and Gemini. And then Mars just putting a lot of pressure on that, uh, and then how that interacts with boundaries is, I think, is very parallel to how you just described crunch time.
Yeah. Yes. Is it easy to go to now on your chart?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I
Yeah, I think
thought
we're actually
there was a
relatively
sextile
close.
also that was interesting with,
Yeah, so
I thought it was
we have this Mars,
Mars.
Mars Jupiter in Gemini, and then we have Saturn over here, and you can see that it's a Jupiter's at 17 degrees, Saturn's at 17 degrees retrograde, and so that conjunction is going to happen, I think, 3 times over the next going into 2025, and then and so this is a lot. So
Oh, it was the
this
sun. It was the sun sextile. That's what it was. It was the sun in Leo sextile Gemini for Mars and Jupiter. That was the thing I was thinking about too, which is also causing. Anyways,
yeah.
we're look at us using professional grade astrology software to try to be astrologers. That's not the point of the show. We're just talking about a dev design journey. And one of the things that comes with good design and good development is good boundaries. And we've said it before, we're going to say it again. That's Mr. Saturn coming in hot and heavy with boundaries. What should the viewer do today, Mr. Henry? What is your idea that the viewer should do today?
Uh, find make sure that you are setting correct boundaries so that the things that are most important to you have space in your life. whatever that thing is. If it's free time, if it's spending time with family, or if it's working, maybe, and having to carve that time out from your family.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, do your best to try to communicate those boundaries well with those who care about you.
Or read a book. You're at the library. Why not just go to the left, pull a book from the shelf, and go do it? Go set some beautiful boundaries, everybody, and have yourself a beautiful weekend or whatever day you watch this video. We love you very much. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Goodbye.
Bye.